God so loved the world that he sent his only begotten Son to save us and to have life in his Son. His promise of sending his only begotten Son to our humanity is to proclaim his message of love. His message that it is through God's love and loving ourselves as we love our neighbor that we fulfill all the love of the prophets and God's plan through all humanity. That is the truth, and that truth has been proclaimed to the church for more than 2,000 years. And today's gospel, one of the Sadducees asked Jesus Christ, what is the great commandments of the law? And he said, love your God with all your heart, with all your mind, and with all your soul. The first commandment is to love God first because love comes from God. Perfection comes from God. It is through his love and through his kindness and perfection that he will help us as a church members to really understand in a deeply way what is our calling and what is our vocation as a church. And the second commandment is that one, to love your neighbor as you love yourself. You might have this question, and who is my neighbor? Should I have to love a person that I don't even know in my life? Should I say sometimes to somebody that I really don't have a good communication with that person? Whatever the situations in life are, the Lord reminds us that it is through kindness, it is through respect and tolerance and love that we are fulfilling our obligation as believers. And sometimes we have those situations, the relationships in our lives. Sometimes it can be your husband, your wife, your family members, even co-workers, neighbors, even in the church. Sometimes we have those kind of situations. But challenge us. But it's a good challenge because if we don't know what is in our hearts, how can we love our neighbor when sometimes we don't love ourselves? That is truth. We cannot love anyone when sometimes in my heart, in our hearts, is envy or being annoyed with somebody else. We cannot love in that way because those imperfections make us to separate us from one another. But the Lord is very clear. He said to you and to me, to the church, if we love Jesus Christ, if we ask the Lord to help us every single day to ask the Lord to accept my calling, to accept my struggles in my life, my suffering, my pain, but do it with love, that will help us to little by little change our attitude and fulfill God's love to one another. It's a journey that we need to walk every single day. It's an ongoing process, an ongoing journey that we walk every day. But the more we ask the Lord to fill our hearts with his blessings, with his love, with his patience, with his kindness, he will help us to move in that direction. But we have to also do our part. We have to do something to make that acclamation of Christ and the Lord to be echoed in our lives. The question is, what challenge we might face in these 2 commandments? Why is it sometimes so hard to love our neighbor? What things separate us sometimes to love our neighbor when we are not doing God's love in our midst? Whatever those questions, whatever those answers are, the Lord is there for us to help us to see more closely into our hearts, that it is through his love that our hearts be united with him and with one another. That is the reason Christ, before he died, he celebrated the Holy Eucharist, the Last Supper, as a sacrament of love and reconciliation to one another. That's what happened in the Holy Eucharist. The Lord gathered us together around this holy table and invites us to eat and drink with him to satisfy our hunger for his love. That when you receive Christ in the Holy Eucharist, our hearts and our bodies is filled with his presence. That he can enter into our lives, into our minds, and help us to recognize who Christ is and who we are as his people and his servant. But I think the challenge, the hard thing is to do God's work out there in our society, in our culture, with people. We find all those kind of things over there. That sometimes we don't see love in those relationships. In fact, that's what happens. The lacking of love is what makes relationships hard and hard, because we cannot love by ourselves. We need to ask God to help us how to love us first and how to love our neighbors and accept a person the way who they are. I know it's not easy, but it's a good news. Christ is there for you and for me and for the church to sustain us, to help us to grow in holiness and to see how good the Lord is. But we had to do our part. We had to be also messengers of that gospel and make that gospel to make us to move our lives in that direction. Thank you for being here, because this is who we are. We are members of this parish, coming together every Saturday at 4:30 and Sunday morning around this holy table, asking Jesus to fulfill these 2 commandments. Love, help us how to love you first, and love my neighbor. That is to your love and to your presence in the Holy Eucharist, that my heart and my life is filled with your blessings, that I can share those blessings to your wife, to your family, to your friends, and they might recognize me by the way that I love Jesus and speak in his name. This is who we are. We are Christians, we are Catholics, because the Lord calls us first by our name, and then he sends us out as his servants to go out and make the proclamation of Christ. Wherever you are, as a married man, as a married woman, as a widow, as a priest, as a community, always bring the love of Christ and see in our hearts peace, unity, and forgiveness. In doing that, we are fulfilling God's word and make the kingdom of Christ to be among us. It's wonderful. And we need that. You know that better than me, especially nowadays, closing to elections is going to be a little tough. But we as a Catholics, we can make the difference. We can say that it is through love and through God's love and loving our neighbor that we can make our country and our church and our families and our relationship a place of welcome Jesus and love Jesus and see Jesus in one another. And I invite you, when you want to receive the Holy Eucharist in a minute, whatever bothers you, whatever you're longing for in your life, ask Jesus Christ that to this Holy Communion, may our hearts and our minds be with him, that we can experience his love and share the love to one another as God's people.